All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. This is episode 48, and we're joined with Jeff, or YetiMan01 from Instagram. And Jeff is a really interesting guy. He does a little bit of everything, it seems. So, Jeff, let's start it off with how did you get into manufacturing, machining? Just tell us your backstory. Go as far back as you want, and kind of to present day would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just probably similar to you guys and similar to a lot of other people. You just have a super strong network of mentors and people that you kind of look up to and inspired by. And so some of those people being my dad, my brother being a excellent mechanical engineer. My dad is kind of the classic like agricultural engineer, agro engineering we call it, and basically whatever it needs to be done to make it work, he's the guy. And so he kind of taught my brother a lot of the skills, and my brother kind of took what he was taught and kind of refined it, brought it more to a more streamlined professional level. And then my brother was kind of able to teach me. And it goes all the way back like many generations. The both my my family comes from manufacturing. My mom's maiden name is actually Hawes. My dad's Tiedeken. Both come from a part in Germany, in northern part, and near Stuttgart. So both kind of in the manufacturing sectors of Germany. So it's pretty neat when you track back the history. You actually find a pretty unique history back, and that's one of the more exciting things to kind of track that thing, like track back your history and kind of see, what you do today. Does that make it, does it kind of correlate to some of your ancestors?
That's really cool.
Yeah, and
So did you start in grade school or,
yeah, so like again, like a lot of other people, bicycles are one of those gateways to a lot of the manufacturing. And my brother and my dad both built bikes, and that kind of led to being around that in kind of the early 90s, actually probably late 80s, early 90s. Both my brother and my dad were building long travel motorcycle concepts, both bicycle concepts. And then that kind of led into where my brother was in kind of the late 90s, or like mid to late 90s. And he was doing a lot of the like virtual pivot point concepts for downhill mountain bikes. And at that point, kind of when you're around that and you have a lot of people in that network as well, like bicycle frame builders and stuff, I mean, you kind of fall into it. And I got super inspired by kind of what I was seeing in the welding side of bicycle building. And that kind of got me sparked about, becoming a welder. And having epic, shop teachers in high school also was a major factor to make sure that I always had the right tools for the job. And I always had argon tanks, and I had filler rods and tungstens, and that I was doing really pretty crude work. But because a lot of the times you're learning. And the cool part about them is they just kept on feeding me, like even if I was making bad stuff, I was so excited about it. And then that kind of led into working in a machine shop. I worked in an ISO 9001, a shop that made brakes, and that was my high school job. And it was so interesting because now I look back and I get a laugh out of it, because you're so excited when you get those like first jobs and you're really excited about it. And you're like, they're like, oh, we want you to grind these burrs off the end of this part, right? And then the shop manager comes back and he's like, oh man, you're doing such an awesome job. No one's ever been able to do a job like this as fast and good as you can do it, right? They just feed you BS because they want you to do this job forever, right? And it's like, and so I think about like some of that, and I was like, oh man, I was fed such full like shovels full of BS back at that machine shop. But it was interesting because I didn't have any problem doing it. I was so stoked about doing like deburring and stuff. And I actually it was interesting because I had so much excitement for doing all the processes that I got this ability to like move around. And I think one of the, and I always tell people, like, when, that when they're first wanting to get into machine shop stuff, I'm like, just get a job at a machine shop. And, you're going to do a lot of crappy jobs and you're going to do a lot of really fun jobs, but at least you're going to get a good perspective of the range. And one of the interesting things was, like, I did a lot of those crappy jobs, and they would just keep moving me around to crappy jobs. Like, I'd be deburring one day, and then the next day I'd be running like the Sun and Hone, honing bores, and like just covered in oil.
Oh gosh.
And then they had me spinning chips on the Swiss machines, and I was like, "This is awesome," right? Like, and I just did all these really
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. You guys know. I mean, I think a lot of the people that are listening have been through that, and it's almost better when you're like kind of gullible and young, and it's kind of. I was really excited about the welding and doing that stuff at school, like during high school, and then working at this machine shop when I had free time as a part-time employee. But the cool part about it, I'm super fortunate to have come from a small town in Minnesota where the workforce there is a lot of tool and die makers, and it's a unique little town because it has a humongous 3M injection mold shop. And so one of the main things that was really special about the town that I was in, and this is kind of like should be inspiring to other people to kind of see as an example, is like, if you basically early on, incentivize these shop programs in these high schools, you basically are building your workforce for pennies on the dollar, right? So 3M would throw down a whole bunch of scrap material. They would throw down like, hey, we're getting rid of this Bridgeport out of this tool room. Like, we're going to drop it off at the high school. They would just feed us. And like, and it didn't matter what it was. It was like the most clapped out old Bridgeport, but we had rows of Bridgeports. We had rows of clausing lathes. We had an in-house foundry. We had a full sheet metal shop. Like, the foundry was amazing. I mean, I was able to do 40-pound sandcasted stuff before I was a junior in high school. So it's like, to be able to do those kind of things. We had an MCO CNC. The best part about the MCO CNC was like, it was super cool. It was like, we would do the classic kind of write G code by hand, but like in the table, in the T-slot table, there was like probably at least 30 different sets of initials. It's like people would like, if you're a senior or something, you got to leave your mark, right? So that like the next year knows that you were there. So you engrave your initials into the table. It's hard to tram a table in with like 30 initials on it, but yeah, like that. It doesn't matter, And I know it's a little bit different now with like a lot of these Hawes and stuff, but it's cool. I mean, it's one of those things where, these high schools, they would basically build these programs internally. You think like, so 3M gives a, $2,000 Bridgeport mill to this high school. There's a teacher there that just does enough jobs to like, teach the kids to work safely around it. But these farm kids, like, that they get this ability to run a Bridgeport and do it safely. And they build a bunch of stuff that's super cool. And then, they get to this point where they're, a senior and they have to decide. And one of those points, like they have this huge opportunity now. They're familiar with a Bridgeport. They got, at least 100 hours on it by the time they're a senior. And you can leave and go right to 3M and like, make, in a small town Minnesota, like, or a small town in Minnesota, if you can make like, $60,000 when you're like 18, fresh out of high school, working in a tool shop, that's pretty amazing. Like, so they built that network. And so, these towns have these epic tool and die programs, which, I mean, if you use that as an example, it proves that it works. So, I mean, that I was really fortunate to go to a school. I mean, you don't think about those things when you're growing up, but once you get older and you look back, you're like, whoa, I was so lucky. Like, I don't even think about it till I look at it now. I'm like, man, we had a foundry, like we were pouring like full sandcasted molds of those sprinklers that look like little tractors that drive across your lawn. We'd make those, and we'd make
oh my God.
stuff, like we were doing like, we tried to build a Briggs and Stratton one time. That was like all made out of aluminum cans that we had melted. Cause like the weird part about it is there's no like budget, right? So you have to do what you got to do to like round up that much of aluminum. We have the epic tools. The budget wasn't there for materials. So we melted like probably 35 bags of aluminum cans because you get like a teardrop out of each can. You figure to make like 8 pounds of aluminum, it takes some serious bags of cans. But our teacher would let us do that stuff, and that's, he would let us do it at a safety level. Like we would definitely get yelled at all the time, but like you build this level of understanding working in a shop, and your outlook is so different, and it's fun. You have no like real repercussions of a job quota or anything. Like you're just enjoying it, and it's such a fundamental part of kind of building the next generation. And I'm glad that like Haas and a few others see how important that stuff is, but and like really stepping up, and guys like Titan and a few others. But man, I really hope that like more kids get this opportunity in the future to have kind of that upbringing like that. Now that the tools are getting even safer than they've ever been, and like the computer programs and all that stuff are getting so user friendly, it's pretty epic time right now to be kind of in the teaching world and being involved with students. That's a kind of
really important, especially now.
Yeah, I mean that's my long intro to kind of who I am. It's a fundamental of who I am.
So Jeff, what do you do now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't even know how to describe it. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I don't really label myself as a machinist, and I don't label myself as a welder, and I don't label myself as an engineer, because I feel like I'm actually not any of those, because I know at what level you need to be the best. And like when I see a lot of your guys' machining work, I'm like, yeah, these guys, these are the professional guys, And when I see, like, when I go on Instagram and when I work around like different projects, and I see like top level welders, I know, even though I'm a licensed aerospace welder and that's what I went to school for, like I still know that I'm not really a welder. Like I know how to get the job done safely, but there's truly people out there that are way better than me. And so when I actually give my title, I'm just a farm kid from Minnesota that loves to cut metal and put it back together. So that's kind of my title in a nutshell, so that I don't feel like I'm treading on anyone's territory.
But for our listeners, if anybody hasn't seen his page, definitely go check it out. He makes amazing parts, welds amazingly. You've got a plane project, a million bike projects. I think you're selling yourself a little short for anybody who hasn't checked out your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part about kind of my upbringing is how general it is, right? So it's the classic like Midwest farm kid where you have the ability to just get the job done. And like I tell people that all the time when people are talking to me about starting shops and stuff like that. I said the number one thing to success is just getting the job done. Like if it means that you can't take on the next job because you need to get that job done, like your reputation is built by how well you do finishing jobs, not by how many jobs you can take on. And so one of the interesting things, like my reputation has been built on kind of having those complex problems thrown at me over the years, and really finding solutions one by one and breaking down systematically like big complex things and looking at how to really get the job done. And like right now I'm working on a nuclear reactor project, so I'm basically breaking down the components of the reactor and kind of understanding pros and cons of doing everything of the from the legs it sits on to like the cement to the everything. And I'm looking at it like as a builder perspective, not as an engineer perspective. And I'm really helping the engineers by being kind of a liaison. Before this job, I was working for Elon Musk as a manufacturing consultant and helping start a new company And that was also a project, like, to find challenges that hadn't been solved yet, and really dive into them. And spending a lot of time with Elon one-on-one to kind of look at the challenges and find the cheapest, easiest, fastest solution to get the job done. And those are, I've been fortunate to be in these weird positions where I get this ability to be kind of a liaison, and that's been the kind of the coolest part, because I get to see the whole scope of it, but looking at it in a weird perspective, because I go into the fine details and I understand the details, but I also oversee the like whole scope, so I don't get lost in the details. And that's why I really never kind of define myself as a specific thing, because I don't even know where I belong. I'm just there to help.
So how do you go about a project like that? Like, if you're approaching a project like, let's say, this nuclear reactor, are you going and finding subject matter experts to talk to? Or are you Googling like crazy, all of the above? Like, how do you go about solving a problem you haven't solved before?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's, the interesting thing is, like, there's so much history out there that, like, honestly, sometimes solving the project is actually just being really good at memorizing history. And so one of the interesting things that, like, I feel like I've been kind of fortunate with is a really good memory for memorizing things. And I just study things all day, all night. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, I study how things work, and systematically, like, if you really break down a lot of things, you realize that everything's built off of pieces of things that were previously built. So how do you kind of be the cross pollination where you connect the ideas? So a lot of times what I'll do is, on this nuclear reactor project is a good example. Like, you basically, I was brought in as, like, to kind of head up the shop and kind of build the team and stuff like that. And then you start to work and build the relationships with a lot of these scientists and engineers and stuff, and you start to see their problems, or things that basically that they're hitting walls with. And I mean, you guys do it all the time. Like, you don't maybe see it on that grander scale of that, but you do solve problems and challenges all the time. Like, whether that be a customer coming to you and you giving them advice, it's the same thing. It's just I do it sometimes at that level, and I do it sometimes at a bigger level where it's more conceptual. But yeah, finding things in history or from your own memory of problems that you've seen or successes, and try to kind of connect the dots. And that's I've just been really fortunate to be part of a lot of really wild projects over the last 15 years to kind of soak up all that knowledge, and don't forget it. Like, that's one of the most awesome things, is thinking about all the people that you've been around with that knowledge, and what you've learned from them, and what you can kind of add to the project at hand with that knowledge.
Okay, yeah, that's a great answer. I've definitely, I certainly understand what you're talking about. Being able to cross pollinate, I think the way you put that, it was excellent.
Yeah, and
So
there's
speaking of projects
yep.
that you've been a part of, a few of our our listener questions,
Oh
Spiny
boy.
Hedgehog and Spencer J. Harding, they asked, when will the espresso machine be finished, and when will the land speed bike be finished?
And these are career projects, people. We all have them. So the espresso machine is such an interesting one too, because that one is like, I'm not one to write a lot of things. Like, I have a good memory, so I love to write. Like, I love to just remember things, and I'm really good at that. But, like, I don't have a journal. But one of the interesting things that I've thought about in my life is, like, how do I have a journal of something that, like, I can kind of document my kind of learning and things like that, kind of a physical object that becomes a journal. And one of the interesting things that I kind of came up with was building this espresso machine. My plan is to get it done in about 2095, so I'll have my first cup of coffee probably about I'm like, it's gonna be sweet. I'm guessing the coffee is gonna taste like total horse beep now. but but yeah, that's to be expected. But a lot of the things like with the espresso machine was, as I learned, I kind of put that into something I built, right? So when I learned metal spinning, I built the vessels for it. When I worked on projects for one of the particle accelerator projects, like I put some of that knowledge of things I had learned into that vessel. When I learned electron beam welding, when I learned some different methods on sheet metal forming, I put it into it. So like as I learned different strategies in machining, I put that into it. So when I get to 2095, when I have my first cup of coffee and I enjoy looking at this thing, I step back and I can see, like basically 100 years of my work in this thing. and, and that's why it might not ever get finished. It's just it's a career project, but and mostly I'm just kind of worried that like I'll spend like maybe like 12,000 hours building this thing, and then it's going to make such awful coffee, and that's all that everyone's going to be concerned with. So if I never make coffee in it, then people will never have to complain about it. So that's the plan. As far as like a lot of the other projects is, those are projects like, for a long time I started a land speed bike because I was talking a lot of trash. I was working on a secret project with two of the guys that hold the land speed record for a bicycle, which is like 89 miles per hour. And there was so much trash talking happening. Well, just me trash talking, that I had to like, and I actually feel like potentially their new record was slightly because of my trash talking. Like I have a lot of connections in the bicycle industry. So my idea was that I could build this land speed bike, and then I could also kind of have one of my, tops, my world champion buddies that race road bikes and mountain bikes ride it, so that they would really go fast, right? And I think I struck so much fear in the Aerovelo guys that they maybe went a little bit faster last year on their speed trials. So I maybe pat myself on the back for assisting in setting the bar maybe 2 miles per hour higher. But yeah, the parts are all just
Oh.
sitting here. So I don't know. One of these days, I guess I should probably finish it and actually like, then I don't have to trash talk so much. just I just take it out and break 100 miles per hour or something. Just quickly do it and get it done with.
Yeah, no big deal, right?
No big deal. It should be.
So, Jeff, let's take a step back. Let's take a step back and look for all the people listening, because not everyone's going to be following you. Like, and I've talked to you one-on-one through messaging, but
Yep.
do you have your own company? Are you just consulting? Do you have machine shop? Do you have equipment? Like, for those that aren't listening, kind of fill in those voids so people can kind of understand, what you do, I guess, more fully.
Sure, that could get messy. So let's see here. So basically, I do okay. So I am just a guy. I'm not. I don't really hire. I have people, and I'll get to that. But it's really just me. I started a company called Monkey Like Shiny, and the name is kind of a goofy one, but it's basically the idea that like if you chromed a turd, that people would hold it and admire it, but like if you gave them a turd, they wouldn't, right? So like the idea basically being that you can like you can fool everyone by having something shiny. So the idea is we're all like monkeys, and basically like that company is kind of a consultant company slash design company. So it's yeah, it's I thought it was funny just to get paychecks from Boeing to Monkey Like Shiny because I thought that just looked funny. But now that I'm like getting older, I'm starting to realize that maybe the Monkey Like Shiny was actually like kind of it's time to like calm it down. So I changed it to MLS Aerospace so that it sounds more professional. But yeah, exactly. Like, because no one wants to know that like the seats on the Dreamliner were worked on by Monkey Like Shiny. Like that's that is like intimidating to probably people's fear. There's already enough problems with everything else. We don't want to add to it by who did it. Even though it's done to the highest level it can be done, it's just kind of it's a goofy one. So like, yeah, it's so I have that, and that was kind of my start of my company. And other people kind of probably that listen to this will probably also know that like every so often you'll work for yourself and you do your thing, and you're just like, it's exhausting like to do your own thing. And then sometimes you're given a good opportunity to like work for someone, or work on a project, and then you'll go back to working for a project. I'll do that for like a few years, and then I'll go back to, after I go a little stir crazy, then I'll go back to working for myself, and then I realize how stressful that is, and I go back. So it's like a revolving door of never knowing exactly what to expect and do. But I think that also adds to the value. I always make sure that I start and leave every project as professional as possible, and at a safe point, so that no one's ever left hanging. And I think that's a key ingredient. There's not a single company or person that I deal with that I can't go back to if need be. So I think that's the major thing, is to always leave every door open. And recently, I working for the nuclear company. That's a full-time job. But recently I started a new company, and it's called Cutting Time. I can unveil it because I just signed the papers a few minutes ago before the podcast to make it official. So yeah,
Congrats.
yeah, we're literally 10 minutes old, and we incorporated on 420. So I made that a big deal to make sure that we made that a monumental point. So, but,
Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, congrats.
yeah, it's official. So filed, and it was really interesting, like the coming up with the name Cutting Time and getting all the legal value, and the business and the .com. It was really interesting because it's a really simple name, but like there was no cutting times in the whole United States, and the .com was just available, like just like apparently just out in plain sight, and just maybe I don't know what happened, but I just thought of it one day and was like, okay. So that's it. It was so easy and streamlined. But Cutting Time is basically going to be my kind of next company that I've started. And the company is really specific about kind of developing patents for tools and different things to aid in machine shops, and just overall just like just a more professional company. I think my second time around I'm going to do a little bit better job, so that's my goal. First time was a butcher fest.
That's awesome.
I'm not going to go through that again.
So you got you got a full-time job, you've got your own MLS aerospace, you've got another company. How many irons, any other irons in the fire?
Oh, there's always irons in the fire. You got to be tied in with everything. I mean, a lot of it also is like on the, I love to help, different school programs and stuff. I've also been fortunate to be a curriculum writer for some of the NIMS certifications, and it's really awesome because I was able to do the NIMS in high school, and it's really awesome to be able to now be on the other side of it as being a student doing the Metalworking Institute, like tests and stuff in uh, college and high school, and now to be on the other side of it and be able to be helping write the curriculum for the new CAD CAM side of it, which is going to be really cool. And it's already rolled out, and it's already getting tests done and stuff, and so it's super cool to see my name in the back. And in the back it says Monkey Like Shiny because I hadn't started Cutting Time yet. So, just to make it again. Yeah, I feel a little bad about that. That wasn't very professional, but it's cool. But yeah,
That's awesome.
I think that's like one of my biggest things now is I feel like I'm at a good point also in my career where I can I feel confident to a point of knowing that I can like approach that and be able to teach, the next generation and help teach that next generation to make it like more formalized. And also just, I don't know, taking I like we're a kind of a special generation because we've grown up with a majority of our generation growing up solely in CNC. Whereas like, people our parents' age have grown up over, pre CNC and then into CNC. So it's a pretty interesting thing. We oftentimes look at CNC as like the only option, whereas a lot of the people in a lot of these organizations see dual sides of a shop where they see CNC and manual, and they still have like a hard cut, precedence on teaching the manual side of it. And it's interesting because, our younger generation getting into the curriculum side of it, really see the like how much these shops are actually doing manual work, and they're really pushing for the younger people are pushing for really developing just the CNC side of it, which is super cool to see that this generational change is happening in the machine shop world. And yeah, that I get to be part of it, and others from Autodesk like Al and a few others, like it's cool to be part of it. I'm super thankful that they actually can like convince someone to let me be on the curriculum writing board.
I think you're a great person for it, for sure. So speaking of Autodesk, our listeners might not know, but you worked with Carl Bass, and were probably one of the real early adopters of Fusion and all of that. Can you kind of go into that?
Sure. Yeah. So Autodesk uh, so yeah, just totally like I was part of HSM, kind of the user group, long before Autodesk was ever involved, and I was using it on SolidWorks, and it was super random. Like I got cast onto a TV show because I was doing TV shows for a while, and I got cast onto a TV show, and then this dude showed up, Anthony Graves, and he showed up with a briefcase to the show, and he was also one of the people they were casting on the show as kind of a manufacturing expert. And I seen his briefcase, and I was like, hey, that's HSM Works. Like I use that stuff. It's awesome. And he was like, oh man, like we need to like link up more. I don't know how I haven't met you. And so basically like we met up in San Francisco, and he was in San Francisco a few weeks later to start the acquisitions side of like HSM getting acquired by Autodesk. And so it was really strange because like it was very hush hush, and like I had no clue about that. But he had just went out to eat with Carl, and he was like, hey, I met this guy Jeff, you should meet, we should go over to his place. And so those guys just showed up at my shop one day, and I was like, okay. Like, and then yeah, like basically Carl and I just kind of hit it off, and he's such a good dude. Like if you have any background on Carl, I mean, he's more of a builder than anything. Like epic woodworker, awesome machinist. Like actually worked, in like the 70s or 80s for Boeing up in Seattle as a machinist, and also owned like a wood, like a cabinetry shop that specialized in building stuff for boats, specifically boats. And then yeah, like that's kind of his foundation. And then he like got all these connections and kind of started this small software company with his buddies. And slowly, one by one, those guys kind of moved up the ladder, and became CEO, CTO, CFO. Like they basically, these five guys kind of run Autodesk. And it was awesome to kind of build that relationship and kind of see that at the core this dude is just straight up like wants to just build stuff. And I think that's what we see now in Fusion, because that was him pushing hard for this manufacturing suite to get added to it. And early on, like being part of that, the like being on the inside early on, it was interesting. And that, like, to see how kind of Autodesk wasn't that excited about getting into it, because it had been standalone for so long with Mastercam and Gibbs and all these other companies. Like it's always been a standalone thing. So I mean, it was a huge gamble, and Carl, really seen the future of where things need to go, and the people that he has on his team that maybe haven't seen Cam yet that could take Cam even farther. And so yeah, it's pretty cool. And I also through that kind of network met Al, um, and Al Watmote. Yeah, like he was a school
Yeah.
teacher and got a job at Next Gen, which was a reseller for HSM. And he just same thing. Like he's been along for the ride, and he's made his way up to the top, and can't find kind of a better team now on the HSM team. Those guys are all stars, like, so it's cool to see, CJ and Al and the whole gang kind of, those guys are just making it better and better every day. And in those early days, Carl asked me like, "Hey, uh, can can you be a test subject?" So for this new program called Fusion, this is like Fusion user number like 7 or something, and I tried to run this program. It was a it was a quite a mess back like in the first months of Fusion, because it was all these kind of mix match parts put together. But yeah, I was able to, with a team of 3 people, we wanted to show how a machinist, an engineer, and kind of a designer could work simultaneously in different locations. And so we designed and built a prosthetic leg for a girl that had been injured in Iraq. And so we built this prosthetic leg for her, and then we brought it to Autodesk University, and we showcased the whole story at Autodesk University, and it was really cool. Like, but it was pretty funny because like there was nothing like, you see Fusion now and it's pretty streamlined, but Fusion back then it was a serious butcher fest to make it work. But but luckily through
Well, it like
some,
wasn't even one solid program, right?
I was
It
like
was like CamWorks and Fusion or something like that.
it was like HSM Works was like a separate unit, and then like we had to switch back and forth, and there was crisscrossing of Inventor and stuff like that, and it was just all these programs. I mean, the idea with naming it Fusion is that it's a fusion of 3D Max, HSM Works, Inventor, and all these other programs that already exist. So that's the idea with naming it Fusion and 360, because it combines all the things that Autodesk does really well. But yeah, back in the day, it was like not far from Fusion. It was like, so we got it done, and and it was cool because when this was long before it got unveiled, at Autodesk University, and it was cool. Like it definitely turned out really well, and now you see it growing to this level where people around the world are learning how to do things that they've never ever thought they could ever gain access to, because of Carl's belief that if we allow people to learn on it, it's going to build a network that's stronger than we could ever predict. And you know what, people will be honest and pay for it, and people that need it will value it and build off of it, and it's only going to get better. And so, I mean, it definitely takes a visionary to take $1 billion company and like kind of go into the dark. So yeah, commend Carl for kind of seeing that, because he's definitely built something that's pretty amazing.
That must be pretty cool to see it go from, like you said, what it was in the early days to what it is now. And I'm sure you use it, so it must be pretty cool to kind of look back on what it used to be.
Yeah, it's also cool because it really hasn't changed that much. Like the best part about it is like we complain sometimes when there's like changes here and there, things happening. But the best part about that program is with all those great people behind it, like they're actually using it. Like right now, as a good example, like CJ is working on the post processor for all the new Hawses that are coming out. Like he's so excited right now working on it at like after 5, like he's like, that's the team you want. They're passionate about building stuff, and and they're open for criticism, and they're open for stuff. But like fundamentally, like if you look at Fusion 6 years ago or whatever it was, 7 years ago, it's like not any different than now. It's just it works really smoothly, which is amazing.
Totally. So we've got some other questions. I guess more generic ones. So, of all the machinery you've worked on, and it seems like you've worked on quite a bit, what's your favorite machine you've ever run?
Oh man, there's there's like such a variety of things. There's so many things that I don't know. I mean, out of all the favorite machines, oh man, this is a hard one. I really am like, I think the one thing that has really like hit me as a challenge, like that I try to explore, but I like get intimidated, is like progressive die stamping. It's just one of those things where like once you meet people that are really good at it, like their like brain works in a different way, and it's like, it's like seeing that kind of stuff is inspiring to me. But when it comes to like interesting machines, I don't know. God, I've worked on so many weird custom machines too, uh, but I don't know. I really like grinding stuff too. A lot of the super high precision stuff. I think that's like a world that I also strive to be in, but I don't feel like I'm in the league of. It's like that, like extreme high precision stuff. Like, when you're starting to measure things in wavelengths, it's kind of, and like one of my mentors, Tom Lipton, you guys have had him on the show. You guys all know Tom. Like it's one of the interesting things. Like he's like, come on, man. Like he knows that I don't know if I have the attention span to be at that level. And so I think it's good sometimes for him to wake everyone up to make sure they're reminded where they should belong and where they shouldn't. But yeah, some of those really wild machines like that at Autodesk. There was a Mori NTX that's the 9-axis or 11-axis machine. That's basically 2 lathes, a mill, and another lathe, like kind of built into one machine. That machine was like $1.5 million. Like, it also,
Jeez.
those are really cool machines to run. I've been super fortunate to build stuff like on them. But it's like, it's the ooh and the ah factor, but once you start stripping it down, you realize it's just a lathe and a mill. So, yeah, I think the weirdest machine that I've run and can't really figure out what to do is actually the machine that Tom gave me, and it's the Kearney and Trucker autometric machine. And it's got so many axes and movements that it was designed for something in the war, and neither Tom or I can really figure out exactly what it was built for. And I have it in my house because I like to look at it because I think it's inspiring. But it's got such interesting flow and curves. I love just looking at things. But like, yeah, I don't know, that machine is weird. It's like a jig bore crossed with a lathe crossed with a mill, and it's just it's like it's got so many things it can do. It doesn't do any of them really good, but there is one part out there that exists where it does it good, and I haven't figured out exactly what that part is. So, and my other favorite machine, probably cosmetically, is definitely got to be the Bergmaster drills. They're just a neat machine in general. Seeing what they're made for and all the details and stuff, it's just an awesome machine.
What about, let's flip the question. What's your least favorite machine you had to work with?
Oh man, I mean, I can definitely tell you like one of the most dangerous machines I've worked with, but I don't know.
Yeah, let's
Like,
hear it.
I was like in high school and I was running this retrofitted CNC. Like it was a Cincinnati that had been so many retrofitted times. Like every so often it would basically just kind of do its thing, like without anyone telling it to do it.
Oh.
And, and so the worst part about it is like, I'm 18 or 17 or whatever, right? And I was working on this product line, which is basically all the gas pedals for John Deere tractors. So all the pins that go through basically from like probably 2003 or whatever to 2005. I made like almost all the pins that are in the gas pedal on the John Deere's. And like the interesting thing was we would do this. They had this one machine just for doing this one job, right? It was like all you did was you took out the centerless ground pins and then you like took them out and then you put them in this like clamp down fixture, push the green button, it would come in and it would mill the flat, which would basically lock in with the potentiometer that drives the tractor. And so I go to like lock them down, and I put all the things in, and the mill like just took off like as I had both my hands in to put the thing in, and it like milled at this like weird dogleg rapid into the table. And this, you think this 50 taper, like this thing can literally cut itself apart, right? And it just milled all the way diagonally, like moving all 3 axes at the same time, all the way, and just buried this end mill all the way through the table and brought it all the way up to like the drive keys on the 50 taper. And it's like, and I didn't even know what happened. I'm like 17 years old, and I'm like literally the clamps are still open, and I'm like my hands are in there, and I realized that like it had went over my hand by like 2 inches, right? Like as I like for some reason I like froze up in that moment, and it milled through that thing, and it was crazy. And then like my boss Gene comes out, and he's like, "What happened?" And I was like, "Dude, the thing just took off." And then like another employee comes over, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing that for like 15 years. You just push the e-stop." And I was just like, dude, like no one told me that. Like I could have just been like, my hand could have just been cut off. But yeah, that was an interesting one. And like I've been hit in the chest a few times by Blanchard grinders and a few other things, like all those things. Like, but
whoa, what?
Yeah, because you got a magnetic table, and it like hits. If it grabs or the mag loses power, it shoots out, and there's so much momentum built on that grinder head. Table saws.
I love how you just gloss over that you got hit in the chest with a magnetic chuck.
The worst one probably out of all of my shop stories is like I was working on this project for a government lab, and I was cutting this super thick piece of polycarb and on this table saw, and I went to lunch, and I came back I had locked the table down, and I had already done like 5 passes on it. And then I went to lunch, and someone unlocked the table saw and moved it out of the way. And then and I came back, and as I started table sawing, the wheel started moving, and I was like, oh God, like as I'm pushing it, the table saw is moving with me. And I was just like, I don't even know how to get out of this.
Oh my goodness.
I kept on pushing, and the piece hit the wall, and then like it stopped, and it like chucked this like 3 foot by 3 foot block of polycarb at my chest so hard. So bad.
Oh my God.
I was like 19. I got about knocked out. I've also been electrocuted through my arm, and I got blasted off my stool once before. Yeah, I mean, other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Like, not really any bad stories or anything.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
So what's a minor incident for you?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, as long as it doesn't involve any like helicopter rides or anything, it's usually pretty straightforward. So.
Oh my God.
So that implies that you have had helicopter rides in relation to machining incidents.
Luckily, I haven't. No, I actually have an extremely safe record in the shop, and it's always those weird things, and like I always tell people it's always weird things. Like I could have never prevented that 50 tool taper, but like that also leads into like a lot of times people ask me about overriding stuff, and it's like I got Haas in my house, I got multiple machines that I oversee. Like if anyone takes those safety overrides off, I like lose my mind, because there's stories, and I'm not going to say any of the shops that I know that this has happened at, but there was one shop where a guy got pinched in between. When the machine homed out, there was another guy in there, and he was cleaning chips out because they didn't have a conveyor, and he was cleaning chips, and someone walked by, and they pushed home because they were like, whatever, it's the beginning of the day. They pushed home, and there was a guy inside the enclosure, and luckily that guy was really skinny and was able to not get hurt. But like those kind of things, like overriding switches and stuff, that's like a pet peeve of mine. Like that's I try to run the safest shop, and I have a whole team of people, and I try to advocate that as well. But I mean, things are going to happen, and so you like I couldn't prevent a lot of the things that have happened to me. But yeah, that's safety is a number one concern, especially when you get into these more modern shops with like a lot of high profile clientele and stuff. If there's deep pockets, and so safety is basically number one, because you could go back and sue some of these .com companies for so much money that you just it's that's why it's important to just make sure that you do it right.
Jeez.
Yeah, makes
Sorry,
sense.
I
And
went
then we have
wild.
another question. Our next questions is, what's the most complex / hardest part you've ever worked on? And this could be personal or, some of these projects you've worked on.
I mean, I've worked on a lot of weird stuff over the years. A lot of stuff that goes into space is kind of a goofy one. And that's always kind of an interesting one because of the complexities of it. So a lot of times, space and like ultra high vacuum are very similar just because of the properties of it. But there's a lot of interesting things about space because of payload weights, where they try to like combine multiple parts, and so you get these like crazy shapes and crazy things, and you're like, really, we're gonna mill this out of like a solid block of metal just to get this like little tab, right? Like, but that like, making that out of two pieces means two screws and potential of like, it coming loose and like failing the mission, which is millions of dollars. So, milling it out of this solid block is the most cost effective and safest way. It's just, some of those complex problems. Um, lots of things that deal with temperature are always kind of the goofiest one for me. I can't talk a lot about some of the things, but like I worked on a telescope that was pretty interesting. They had to bring it like extremely low temperatures on vacuum, and it's basically measuring background cosmic rays. And that was an interesting one that had a lot of challenges with flatness. Some of the biggest pieces of sapphire that have been created, like man-made sapphire, that are the windows, and I was making a lot of the seats and drives and pulleys for it. And it's just getting flatness is like really difficult, because it's like you take these jobs on because they're awesome, and then you realize like halfway through maybe you weren't the right person, or maybe you don't have the right tools. So you do the best you can to get it done, and cost effective and as high quality. But I mean, sometimes you create your own challenge. It's not actually like the challenge of the job. It's sometimes you making it difficult on yourself. So that's like another way to look at it. Some of the hardest jobs I look at, from the past, are actually easy now, in with my current state and connections and stuff. But back then it was like digging a mine, so it was definitely a challenge. So lots of random stuff. But that's the newer thing is kind of the precision of things, and that's like that's also another thing that like it takes time to get good at certain things and really understand where you're looking for, to solve the problem. And you guys know it's like the more experience you get, the easier things get to an extent. But that's kind of my take on a lot of that stuff.
So I guess a follow up would be what job has taught you the most? Like, what have you learned from like one of these jobs that you would like to pass on to somebody else?
Yeah, a lot of it I think just comes down to breaking some of the sometimes, like, I wish I could talk about some of these jobs because they're so specific in the scale and size and things like that. One challenge that I had, was how to restructure kind of the way a process was done, and try to come up with a way to do it faster. So the original process, they could produce one part a day. And after I rethought about it and did a ton of kind of thinking and understanding of the problem, I was able to get it up to 50. And that made it a make or break on being viable. And that those kind of things are an interesting thing, because I don't know, that's a project I wish I could talk about.
That's a
Such a
big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference, and it was something that just no one thought of. Like it was far different than anything, and I found it through kind of a pathway that was far different than I would have ever expected to look. Because one of the major things is like you look at these challenges, and sometimes you look at it just as a machinist, but you got to look at it sometimes differently. Like maybe in the idea of sewing, or in the idea of painting, or so you look at all these different industries and try to find solutions that may be actually a better path forward. But yeah, that's probably, that was one of the most complex ones. The one that has been the most complex for me now is I've been working on the new quantum computer for the government, and that is it's not, nothing is secret on it because it's been it's a Department of Energy project, but yeah, the interesting thing about that is the range of temperatures it goes through, and just the problems that arise with kind of this specific materials. As I get more experience, I feel like I'm getting more and more of the really bad materials that no one wants to deal with. So I don't want to be that guy. Can I not be that guy?
It sounds like you've made a career from being that guy.
I just don't want to get all the guinea pig jobs some days. I love the guinea pig jobs some days, and then the problems are so, it's like you have one piece of material, it fits in the palm of your hands, it's $4,000, and you got one. It's like, why did I get this job? Whatever, it's fine.
Oh boy.
That's when I
And
call
that
up
moves into
Uncle
a question
Tom.
I had, and you had talked on Dylan's live stream, and it was about the giant graphite blocks that you were
Oh, yeah.
working with and that you're trying to plan a process around.
Yeah, that's a project to say the least. So that's one of the challenges that I've been learning is basically working on the nuclear reactor. There's a lot of need for graphite, and graphite is basically like just neutron absorbing, and kind of it builds most of the stuff. So basically, the walls of the vessel are lined with these graphite blocks, and that's basically what prevents the radioactive you know basically it stops the radioactive particles from going out of the vessel. They kind of stop it, block it. And so one of the challenges is to basically create this gigantic reactor. We have to create all these graphite blocks, and graphite's an interesting one for a lot of people. There's not a lot of information out there on how it's done and stuff. And there's two different processes. There's cast and there's extruded, and then there's different types of graphite in all different grades, and for different uses and stuff like that. And so you get into these the graphites they use for like sinker EDMs and things like that. Those are specific graphites. And then you get into like these specific nuclear grades, which are extremely high density, and they basically are very similar in density to like aluminum. So you can kind of like compare it to like a block of aluminum. And so we started looking at how we could have vendors do this, and we got all these prices from super crazy high to super like reasonable, but reasonable being still like hundreds of thousands of dollars for labor. And so we're going to build multiples of these reactors for testing. So it's really important that we figure out how we do this. And so you start to dive into those things, and you're like, okay, where's our return on investment if we kind of go these different routes? We can send it out, we don't learn anything. We can bring it in house, we can learn a ton, but also maybe have tons of problems. And so one of the interesting things was once we started getting a lot of these quotes back, and understanding that there's, for anyone listening, if you want to get into the business of making big graphite parts, there's a lot of money to be made, and there's not a lot of people that do it. So that's an interesting market I had never been part of. And so I just basically learned as much as I could. And what I found out was, there's, in the whole kind of world, there's like about maybe 20 different shops that do big graphite parts. So like, you think about all these shops there's like, small turned parts, there's literally like probably hundreds of thousands of Swiss shops in the world. But when it comes to these big graphite parts, there's like 20. And of all those 20 shops, they're all making like molds for like the Boeing Dreamliner or heat shields for, the re-entry vehicles for different aerospace projects. And so you start to realize you're just going to be like a small number in their game, even though you're asking for a lot of work. And so you start to kind of mitigate the risk early on, as like it's probably a good thing to start to think about doing that stuff in house. So you start looking at, where do you actually get that return on investment? And you start to realize that, the learning is almost, if you can put a number on that, that's more important than anything. But it's sometimes hard for people to put a understand the capital investment for that learning. And so I basically did a Excel spreadsheet showing all the different levels of where we can go and how we can get it done, different options and everything. And then I just, approach the CEO and CTO and I say, like, here it is, it's black and white. And it's like, we can do, 100% of it. We can do 50-50 for a vendor, and that way we have a supply chain that as a backup. And then you break down all the different options of machining processes and stuff. And you start to look at like these graphite specific machines, and you realize how expensive they are. And then, you start to look at other options, which is like, buying a Haas, putting a bellow on the ball screws and just letting her eat. So after a while, I start to realize that's kind of the approach, I think. Like, you're building so many of these graphite blocks and stuff that is probably, your return on investment on a Makino cell at being 1.5 million or higher to pull it off. And then your return on investment on like $175,000 UMC is night and day difference, even if it only lasts like a year and a half. So that was kind of my cost breakdown on it. And it's weird to think about a cost breakdown where you're only looking at like 3-year cycles, because the machine ain't gonna make it much longer than that. So yeah, it's an interesting one. So it's cool though. I mean, with once you break it down and you really show the true numbers, that's kind of what makes you shine as far as your job goes. If you have that ability to see, forecast those things that might come up and the hiccups, and you can also show people the value added, that's the most important part. So there's a lot of value added in everything when it comes to learning, but sometimes it's hard to convince people because learning is expensive sometimes.
Yeah, and it's not easily quantifiable for a bookkeeper or anything like that.
Yeah, especially like when you start to look at the graphite block is a good example. Like, if we, for basically $100,000 worth of work, it costs us like 300 to kind of set up, right? So that's 200,000 extra dollars that like someone's got to foot the bill. And yeah, you have this awesome ability to do this, but like, what's your ROI on $200,000 if something goes wrong? Like, so that's kind of, and then also showing that if you buy these houses and you retrofit them, there is that ability to turn it back into a metal cutting machine if it don't work out. But sometimes it's a balancing act when I deal with setting up these shops and stuff. And this is a good lesson for people, because I've went down it with most of the CEOs that everyone can name on their hands. But it's a compromise. Like, you might have a lot of money in the budget, but you got to understand, like, if you don't plan it like it's your own shop and you don't see the value in it, like, especially when you're dealing with a guy like Larry Page, like the Google CEO, it's like I had an open checkbook, but I bought, like houses, and I bought entry level houses, and they did the job. And then the best part about it is they did the job. And when I went back for the second time saying, hey, I need another machine, he was like, it's so easy because it proved on that first round of budgetary side of thing that like that playing it safe is the key ingredient to kind of the success of it. And so it's always good to show each level as well and make sure that people see that you're in that middle, because a lot of times people just go with the highest number that they see or the biggest ticket item, And so to show that is important.
Totally. Yeah. So we've got a few other listener questions that we can run through. Some of them should be a little easier than others. The Dr. Phil experience asked, "Do you prefer the sound of ducks or donkeys?"
Oh man, donkeys are pretty good. That's like a boxer brief kind of question, you know. There is no like right or wrong answer, I think, right?
I have no idea what he was talking about, so I had assumed it was some kind of inside joke with you guys.
You know, maybe I mean, most of the time I've hung out with Phil, we've been extremely drunk. So, I mean, there was that time that Phil did a slow dance with Mr. Matsura, which was pretty awesome. Those guys, like, they really had like a one-on-one bonding time, like at a party we went to for Matsura. I think my girlfriend Crystal got them to dance together, which was pretty awesome. I don't know if that is advised in the Japanese culture, but I don't know. Mr. Matsura is such a cool dude. I think he's totally down for it.
AC sure seems like it from videos, definitely. So Windmill Motorsports asked, "Are you still building your solar panel container home? And if so, what's the goal motivation behind that? And if you are, where are you buying your solar equipment from?"
Yeah, so that thing is pretty rad. So the container is just the container right now. It was pretty awesome actually. So I designed most of it up in Fusion, and then my second step was to go to the model railroad store and buy all those little mini containers for HO scale trains. And then I put them in the Haas and I cut windows in them and I did all the modeling in Fusion, and I made like a little model with the topography, and I checked it out and kind of got an idea of how I wanted it to look. And then Crystal and we started just rounding up stuff. And basically, I seen this weird project where, since we're building this kind of modular design, kind of we want to keep moving forward on it because as most people know, it's real estate is expensive. So you want to do the most you can do while you can afford it. And these little nickel and dime jobs kind of prep you for it. And so the idea was, if we build the inverters on a skid and put the batteries on the skid, and then we build like all the external parts for all these things, then when we actually get land, we can plant down a pad and we can just put all this stuff together and kind of as a modular unit and put it together. So right now, most of the solar system's wired up, and the goal with it basically is, oh man, I can't say it on the podcast because this is my secret. No, but I have a plan with what I want to do with the solar power, and so I'm making 24 kW of off-grid solar power stored in 2-volt batteries, and it involves machining and making things. So I there's a reason for it, and it's yeah. So that's where I'll leave it.
I didn't know the espresso machine was battery powered.
It's definitely going to be run off the sun. Maybe some wind and some hydrogen. I have a hydrogen fuel cell actually that would be pretty good for it. That would be a good idea, actually. You maybe got me an idea.
Goodness.
I got 3 kW of fuel cells that are waiting for that thing. Maybe that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, there you go. So NYDLS had a few questions that he posted, I think, this morning. A short one is, do you have a bike with desmodromic valves in your garage? I'm guessing he's asking, do you have a Ducati?
Yeah. The Ducati I actually sold to my buddy Nick, mostly because, I don't know. I was riding it for a while with expired reg because I did that for so long, and then I was like, I don't really feel like going to jail right now, so I quit riding it. And my buddy Nick, I felt bad because he like I wasn't really riding it, and then my buddy Nick got doored by a school bus. I don't know. The school bus stopped to talk to a buddy in another bus, and as my buddy Nick was riding by the like 2 parked buses to squeeze through them, the dude opened the door and he like went right through the window. And then I felt bad because I was like, oh man, I'm gonna sell him the Ducati. And so I just sold it. Yeah, Nick just bought it. So, yep. So currently, no.
And then he asked, is AR Machine Man related to Allen Wrench? I'm assuming he's talking about Crystal, but I don't know
Yeah.
who AR Machine Man is.
So Austin, so Crystal's my girlfriend. She's a machinist, prototyper, builder, and welder, and it's nice because she does the same thing as I do, so we can share ideas all day. But yeah, Austin, and there's also Gabe as well. Those are two guys that have been with me for years and years as kind of apprentice slash kind of best friends. So it's been good to kind of teach those guys the way I've learned. And it's cool because they both have these epic skills, and they're, Crystal and Austin are not related. We're all super good friends, and we spend all the time together. So it probably looks like we're we're all family, but yeah, it's basically Gabe and Austin. Austin's really the machinist, and Gabe is the fabricator. I hired Gabe recently for working on the nuclear reactor. So he's getting sent through the whole welding stuff. So he's becoming a certified welding inspector. And so we've been able to but I've been working with Gabe for 10 years now. When he was 15, he started coming around my shop, and he's just gotten better and better every year. He's got the coolest history. He actually we got him a job at Tesla, and my buddy Ian was the recruiter at Tesla, and I got him all linked up and got him a job in R&D, and he was able to work on the Model X prototype, and then he did the Model 3 prototype, and then he also did the Roadster, and then one day he was building the Roadster, and he was on a secret project, and he had no clue. He thought he was building a Roadster for Elon that was going to be super secret, like super lightweight fast, but it ended up being the Roadster that they launched into space. He was taking the doors out of it so that wasn't pulling windows. It's basically like a body shell. But yeah, he had no clue he was working on that. It had a secret name and stuff like that. But it's cool to really bring up someone with your kind of work ethic and also your kind of concepts, and let them do their own thing, but kind of help them along the way. And same with Austin. Austin's been super fortunate to be super skilled and gifted in machining, and he's turned into quite an all-star when it comes to the machining side of it. He's got, if you follow him on Instagram, he bought a VF2 last year, and then I just helped him put the down deposit on a UMC 500. So he's got that going now, and he's just cranking away. And I'm totally 100% supportive in those guys, and if they need help to get the stuff done, I'm down to help foot the bill on getting that machine in, because I know in the long run it's going to pay off, and those guys will get me back. So I'm not worried about it at all. I just want to see those guys, doing awesome work, and those guys are running laps around me now. So it's cool. Sooner or later, I can then just let them do all the work, and I can go back to working on the espresso machine. So I can finish it by 2075, 20 years early.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Another question of his was.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Another question. No, it's okay. Another question of his was kind of related to one of the ones we had earlier. What's the coolest machine you've taken apart and put back together?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I've done some pretty goofy ones. I've taken a lot of goofy things apart. Hydrostatic stuff's always really goofy, but I at one time had this dream of starting a new website as kind of Carl was actually he really thought it was a cool idea, but the .com was too expensive and we couldn't get the guy to break down. But it was called Destructibles, and it was basically a website devoted to taking things apart, because I love to take things apart. I don't want to put them back together. I just want to take them apart. And so that was the idea. Would you take apart like everything, like a household appliance or, goofy things that you just find, you take it apart and you document how it's built, because taking apart stuff is so important to learning how to build things. But as far as like weird machinery and stuff like that, I don't know. There's all kinds of goofy stuff. I think there's the neatest part about it, taking things apart, is you know, as seeing the way people were thinking about things. And I love getting patents and stuff, and so I look at a lot of patents. But like when you see a good idea in something that's kind of hidden away, that's pretty awesome. Because I feel like some days it's like a time capsule, and you would hope that like that person, they might not be on the earth, but they're like smiling that you appreciated the work that went into that. And I think that's super cool about taking things apart.
So speaking about patents, you recently just filed for some. We're not going to go into that, but do you do your own technical writing, or do you know somebody, or?
Well, I've learned the hard way about finding patent lawyers on Craigslist, so I've went away from that, because when I hired the patent guru on the
geez.
that turned into a butcher fest as well. But this time around, I've actually, the interesting part about people, they always assume that patents are so expensive, and this time around, I just got a new patent recently, and one of the interesting things about it was the way I approached it. I approached it like, I just became friends and was very friendly with the patent attorney, and they were really open to like just working with me. And it was like kind of a peaceful thing, like not being stressed out that I'm dealing with the lawyer. And I just know that there's only so much time I have in a day to do certain things. And I really need people to work with me and vice versa to make some of this stuff possible. And so this is my, like, I think like second main patent, but like probably fifth time on doing like an approach to doing patents. And yeah, every time has been a learning experience, but I think that in the end, the being the most personable has been the most successful. And don't hire an attorney off Craigslist. I can guarantee you that is not going to come out good.
Good advice.
Yeah. And then his last question was, who made the flower mural in your old shop?
That's my friend Louise. She's epic muralist. Her specialty is doing large format flowers, and she's been one of my best friends for years and years, and such an epic artist. And I always just thought like the mural and the flowers, you can't really see it because it's so big, but it's actually it's a Boeing Dreamliner. I had been working on the Dreamliner then, and I get so excited about the Dreamliner because it's such an epic project that's been in my career. And like I have it banking at an angle, and the contrails off the two GE turbines is flowers that kind of look like clouds, but as you kind of step back, you realize that they're like this epic floral pattern. And I thought like it was actually in Carl's shop. I just painted it one day, and Carl came back and was like, what? Like, and he didn't hate it, but I think he was kind of taken back that he now had this like epic machine shop covered in flowers. So I think he truly appreciated it because of how awesome it was. But like, I think some days it was kind of like luckily there was so much badass stuff going on in the shop that you could justify having flowers on the wall. And I think that's the key ingredient. You got to be doing some cool stuff in order to justify it to an extent.
Awesome.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you have anything else, Dylan, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean, this is
Hey,
your time.
we're not like we're barely over an hour. Come on, we're shooting for 6 hours. We got time.
I knew he was gonna say that.
Don't give up.
Well,
Now.
how about you leave us with another good couple shop stories? Because I know you've got a million. Every time I talk to you, I end up talking 4 times longer than I expected because of all your great stories.
I don't know. I get there's stories all day. I always think about some of the projects and people and stuff that I get to interact with and stuff like that. And I was thinking I just got a photo the other day. It was so awesome because like they're putting the telescope on the mountaintop in Chile right now, and they're just doing some of the testing, and that is looking for background radiation, basically what formed the Big Bang. There's still stuff that's flowing through our universe from the Big Bang. And this telescope that I worked on is part of it. And one of the interesting things about the awesome part about that is like when I get these photos, it's like every one of the scientists is like on oxygen because it's like 20,000 feet up. It's like on this mountaintop. And then there's always like in the background, there's like some sort of like Chilean like llama farmer that's just like hanging out, drinking a soda. Like, it's no big deal, like 20,000 feet all day. It's such an epic thing to kind of see some of the places that your parts go. And it truly makes you feel good to know that you're a part of it, even if it's, just a few brackets or screws. Like, that's all it takes, man. It's like it takes a lot of people to make things happen, and I'm just pumped to be part of even a percentage of it, even if it's 0.001. It's pretty cool.
Are you talking about the GMT, the Giant Magellan?
No, it's a different project. It's called Project Polar Bear. If you search it up on the internet, you find it. Basically, there's a whole array. I think there's 23 smaller systems that are up on the mountaintop in Chile, and this is one of the smaller arrays. It's one of the ones you commonly see that's like kind of white, that looks like kind of a bigger satellite dish that moves around. It's a tracking system. So
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, I had not heard about that. The only reason I know about the GMT is that they make the mirrors for it here in Tucson. So
cool.
I thought that might be what you were talking about.
Yeah, this one is a little bit different because it uses sapphire windows. So it doesn't use any real mirrors. It's basically the sapphire mirrors spin in opposite directions, and they're under vacuum in vacuum chambers. So there's multiple layers of it. And the idea basically is like this receiver at the back end of it. By spinning the lenses, you're basically, your air factor goes down because it's not in the same, the actual potential of the glass being, or the sapphire being in the same spot for a photo or a receiving is like I guess quantified by the movement of it, so that there's never any if the glass is always stationary, you could potentially have like waves deformed on the receiving, and it could be an error in the sapphire. So by moving the sapphire, you hopefully reduce that. And so yeah, this thing's like, it's very different than a telescope that you think, because it's not for visually looking at things.
Oh yeah, I just looked it up. It is significantly different than what I thought it was.
But that's
Still really cool though.
Yeah, it's like the temperatures and stuff that we dealt with, and the sapphire. It was pretty awesome, because to see like the quotes on the sapphire from all the different vendors and stuff like that, and how they have to grow this piece of sapphire and then cut it and then grind it and try to. It's pretty insane. Like, I mean, I don't know. I like down the street from where my machine shop is in California. They work on like the satellite stuff for like James Webb. They did grind the mirrors down the street. It's pretty rad. They're like super secret, super high precision, but they do some work on some like really classic retro machines that you're like, no way. There's no way that you just made like the world's most powerful telescope on that. and so it's yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely a world that I don't really understand that much, that I would love to learn more about.
Does that shop have that retro of a retro machine?
Yeah, I can't probably say what it is, but it's pretty funny. It's like it's just not what you would ever imagine you'd build a satellite like the James Webb on. So that's as much as I'll give for info. That's like when you look
That's
at
really cool.
how they built Hubble. I mean, Hubble is a pretty interesting. The mirrors, had the person remove the spacers correctly before they did the final grind. But I mean, really, the Hubble was done on a Bridgeport, so it's kind of an interesting. They took a Bridgeport head and mounted it onto a articulating arm, and so it's pretty rad. It's like, this basically like this 2 meter 2 or 3 meter diameter, optical lens with a Bridgeport with like a buffer head on it spinning around. It's like, I don't know. That's in the end, like it just comes down to being creative in those scenarios. So it's kind of cool to see that someone came up with like that. And another cool one is like up at the government lab where Tom Lipton works. They couldn't figure out how to move uh, like X, Y, Z and get the stability that they needed for this beamline experiment for like cancer research. So like they just bought a prototrack and cut the head off it, like to cut the whole vertical part of the ram off it. Like they put like the new head on the mill in the shop, but then they like kept the table, and so it does X, Y, and Z on this prototrack, and they get the accuracy that they need with the thermal stability. And it's pretty rad because you walk by it and you just glance at it and you're like, it's literally it's like cut like a sawzalled off Bridgeport. It's cool, like seeing people
What?
creative like that. So yeah, pretty awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys have
Yeah,
any
it
other
seems like
questions?
I feel like I've got a ton of questions that you probably can't talk about on air, but
You could try, but I
I
don't know.
think that's kind of the.
You could try. I could say yes or no.
Trying to think of like all the stories we've talked about.
How'd you get connected with Elon?
That was pretty random. Someone had just heard through the grapevine that that's what like the projects I work on, and then just randomly called me one day on my cell phone. It's really strange. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
what? So you just pick up and it's Elon that's like, is this Jeff?
Yeah, well, it's actually his assistant, but then yeah, you get transferred over, and yeah, I still remember that day because it was like kind of just sitting out in the parking lot on the curb, and I was like, huh, this is really strange, but like whatever. And so yes, I don't know, and it's like he's like an expert negotiator, but an epic dude, and I've been super fortunate to work around him because he's one of those people in our lifetime that is kind of special, that like that we always hear about like the Henry Ford, and we hear about like the Westinghouse, and we hear about these people. He is one of those people, and he is extremely visionary, and like to get to do one-on-one meetings with them and really like I don't know, it's inspiring. Like as much as the press loves to twist him, it I mean, the dude's like on point. He sees things so far out, like similar to Carl. I mean, this is the difference between a good CEO and just a CEO. It's like they see this thing that's so far out that like others don't see. Like because we often look at a certain distance in time frame, but these people see the cause and effects, and they see like the connections, and they see the pros and cons of it, and they are willing to take the risk because they know that it's worth it in their mind, and they stay true to that the whole time. And working around a lot of these CEOs and seeing this is inspiring because it's intimidating, but like you have to have quite a backbone to make these decisions. And so working around Elon and seeing kind of the way he connects the dots is mind-blowing. I mean, you look at his optimization on things, and his goal is to like do as much as he can in life, and like exert the least amount of energy when it comes to like tapping resources. And so you look at like, if you go back, you look at what he's done, and you look at the Numi factory where Tesla is. It was a previously built factory for Toyota. Like it was built for a car factory. He just found a factory at the current time and worked with people and set it up, and built a car factory. Like you look at the site in Texas, and that was a company that failed. That was a rocket company. He literally moved in, and they had all the equipment there. It came with 100 cattle, and it came with like all the trucks, the like support trucks, the rocket stands, everything was there. You look at the pad in Florida, it's like it was a previously built, pad for the Apollo. Like he finds these things that exist, and these companies and machine shops. I mean, when he needed a machine shop for SpaceX, he basically found Bob, and Bob basically built a shop by buying another shop that had aerospace experience, and he just basically brought that in. Like there's no point in kind of reinventing the wheel when it already exists. The key ingredient is like knowing extremely how, like efficiently how to build the wheel in pieces so that you don't have to go out of your way to build it. And so working around him and seeing that strategy is mind blowing, because he sees these dots so far out that he's able to connect them, and it's pretty amazing to see it, and especially be around it, and it's pretty intoxicating. You know, it's cool.
So, can you speak at all about the projects you worked on with him? Are they public domain yet, or are these
So
still?
yeah, I was. I mean, I can talk a little bit about. So I was like basically one of the early people. So it was about, I think it was 10 of us. I think 10 of us when we started Neuralink. So that's the neural implant that interfaces with your brain, and very very like kind of concept level project. And yeah, it was like 10 of us. It's grown. I think it's like 100 and something now. But yeah, it was interesting to be, in those early days, and it's cool because like there's a high level of trust between all of us people, and there's a high level of like one-on-one with everyone. And it's interesting because like when you learn about manager training, you start to realize that like that barrier to entry can be huge, right? And some of the people in the machine shop world know it probably well, where they have people working on their floor that are operators, right? And if you're the boss and you come out, like there's like an instilled fear sometimes in like people, like they're like, oh, why is the boss out talking to me? But like his goal is, because he knows he's at a certain level, to destroy that barrier to entry so that people don't have that, right? So a lot of these people listening know that like if you're good to your employees, they'll be good to you. And so he instills that with a lot of the people that are in his kind of companies. If you build that trust that you can go to him at any time of the day with any problem, that he will be ready to listen to it. And that's huge. Like that's what builds these companies to the levels they are, because people are willing to approach him and be like, hey man, this isn't working, like what do you think we should do? And it's crazy because you can go to him with a really technical question, be like, hey, we're having this problem, and he'll look at you and be like, let me call someone, and I think I can help you figure this out, right? And it's like, this dude knows nothing about machining at the level that you do, but he hired you, but he's going to connect the dots. And it's like he sees the connections, and that's one of the most inspiring things about working around these CEOs. Same with Carl, like he found an epic company like HSM, and he connected all the dots. And now Autodesk is such a worldwide company because of the connections that him and the team have built. And it's awesome. It's truly, when you get to be around that, it's a kind of intoxicating, like, because you're not really even worried about the money, because there's enough there, but you're worried about it working right. And so yeah, it's cool. I definitely like, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, how did you get hooked up with Google then?
Before I was working for
Same kind
Elon,
of thing.
yeah, before I was working for Elon, it was like basically just Larry Page. So there was a company that bellied up, that basically a bunch of people decided to leave and form kind of a skunkworks project that was kind of secret. And um, that kind of got the attention of Larry Page, the Google CEO. He's like super into kind of finding these secret projects. And he basically found that like there was like 12 of us, and we were just all having fun. And our idea was just to get as many patents in the aerospace industry as possible, and just come up with as many cool things. So that'd be like parachute deployment on airplanes for safety. It'd be like, drone patents, helicopter concepts, like different manufacturing techniques on things, electric airplane projects, like anything and everything you could pretty much get a patent on. We had like a full-time patent attorney that just stayed with us, and we would just come up with concepts. And it was always like overlapping projects, and it was super cool. It's intoxicating. Like it's one of those jobs where you don't want to leave, but you like, you're getting paid an hourly salary, which is like the worst when you have a job that you really really love, that you're like you're not being exploited, but like it's kind of, you're just so stoked about it. And a lot of it's cool. It's one of those special opportunities that I feel like sometimes it's the right place at the right time, and it lasts for a while, and then it kind of peters out, and that's, you go on to the next thing. And yeah, you can't be too bummed. Like if you get too attached to it, it's kind of depressing. You have to move on and know that it had its time and its place, and not to like dwell too much on the past or think it's greener on the other side. Like just sometimes everything lines up and it's awesome. So yeah, I did that for a while, and then we kind of the company grew and it became a bigger company, and kind of diluted some of the like inspiring overnight work that we were doing that was awesome. And then at that point, a lot of us knew it was time to go. The company had a product and it built, and our kind of job as creators was kind of ready to be done at that point.
Jeff, is it weird from when you started growing up, and now you're working with these companies where there's no shortage of money, there's no budget, you can really, really think outside the box. There is literally no budget. Is that weird? Is that fun? Is there challenges behind that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think it's actually a question I think about a lot, but it's also one I get asked a lot. And it's, you know, you would think that you would get this kind of point where you realize that like you could buy anything you want, right? Like, but it's weird because you still have to like think about it. Like this is, someone is giving you the keys, like, and you're driving, right? And you can drive as careless as you want, or you can drive super conservative and you can make sure you get there, right? And there's always the potential of crashing in both perspectives. But I think one of the interesting things is like, as much as wild and crazy I like to live my life, I think that's where my creative side comes. But like, I still drive the car pretty casual. I'm more of a Ford Taurus guy. I think if I was, I love to like make sure I'm gonna get there, and I think that's the key success. Is like, I think once your reputation is built as a loose and reckless kind of guy, like then people start to be nervous about you. If people can trust that you're going to get there, it might not be the fastest, but you're going to for sure get there. That people like, they don't have to like, have that fear of letting you go on your own. Like they know that you're in good mindset of being realistic. And so I do that with the shops and stuff like that. I mean, every sales guy pretty much on the West Coast knows me by name when it comes to buying machinery. I buy lots and lots of machines, but I think in the end, like I'm really conservative when it comes to it. I'm always beating people up for price. I'm always making sure that I'm not buying extra features because I can. I run super lean, and I think that's the key ingredient. Is it's always easy to ask for more later. It's hard to ask for forgiveness if you went too crazy.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I love to.
So what started you off with
I would love to just, have the fast car right off the start, but I know I'll crash it. That's why I don't own a Tesla. I know I wrap that thing around a light pole so fast. I just best not. I just stay with the F-150.
Speaking of cars, how's your electric pickup doing?
I actually sold it recently. I sold it to a guy in Phoenix. So he's down at Altus Motors. That's their new lunch runner at the electric truck company. But the reason I sold it was because Crystal just finished up building her electric Ranger, and she did an epic job building it. She got some donated brand new electric vehicle packs. And she was able to basically reconstruct her. She had the exact same truck as me, but it wasn't running, and she was able to build a super epic, like I think it's like 86 kilowatt hour battery pack. So it should go like 200 miles. And then I was like, no, my truck is cool, but this is like a 200-mile truck. This is way rad. So I put it up for sale and sold it. And so it actually went to a really good home, and I'm glad that it's staying in the EV family. And yeah, super stoked. So we still have few Rangers in the family, but this one is kind of special because Crystal spent a lot of time building it herself.
That's awesome.
Someday I'm gonna buy a Tesla, but I might have to put like a restrictor plate on it. Maybe I just like modify the wiring so the potentiometer doesn't go as fast or something. I don't know. Every time I get in a Tesla, I think I get like stupid. I drive them like an idiot, and like that's bad.
It's hard not to. That power is insane on them.
Awesome. Yeah. Super awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. What else you guys got? Let's see, we got like what, probably 4.5 hours left. So we got to make this worthwhile.
Oh God.
Should I interview you guys?
Oh man, you
kill podcast on you guys and ask you what's the most awesome project that you guys have worked on in the last, like whatever 10 plus years or whatever you've been working on in shops?
Oh man, that's tough.
Come on,
Some of
you
them I
got
can't
to
talk
answer
about
right
all-
now.
all-
You got to answer right now. Come on, I'm waiting. See, that's what it feels like.
Well, we gotta make it long, right? We're stretching it.
Yeah, I got 4 hours.
Come on,
I can
don't
hem and haw for a little bit.
Don't burn time on me. Yeah, I mean it's always hard with the secrecy side of it because I mean, there's some amazing projects out there, that's for sure, that no one knows about.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody on Instagram about that today. He makes his own product, and I was like, oh, you're lucky. Like 85-90% of the stuff that I make, I can't share.
Yeah,
and that's all the cool stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's how it always goes. Like there's a lot of cool things I see on Instagram that I'm stoked that like people get to see it, because sometimes people get so secretive about it. Like a good example of things that was super cool that I've seen was Kyle out in Detroit, that spacesuit project that he was building. I don't know if you guys seen that thing, but that thing's super badass. He's basically making like the whole chest section of the new astronaut spacewalk system, and it's all machined out of a billet.
Yeah,
like that is inspiring. Like that, like seeing that kind of level. That's why I'm like, I could do that maybe, but like Kyle he's what I define as like a true machinist. You guys are true machinists. I'm not. I feel like I'm not at that level.
Oh man, I hate to be lumped into the same level as Kyle because it's nowhere near the truth.
I don't know.
He is one impressive machinist.
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome to see, and he's got all the tools, and he's got a good crew of guys, and it's cool. He's got a lot of good guys that are really excited about doing a good job, and that's also a key to keeping that energy level high. Like, that's sometimes the hardest thing to like tell people is like that shop energy is built by other people sometimes. Like if you don't have that energy, sometimes it's hard to push through some of these projects because they're so intense and so long. Having that boost sometimes is so rad.
So how do you deal with that when you're like leading up these projects? Because you are such like a nice guy to deal with. Like, how do you flip that switch and become a boss and like both endear that shop mentality that you want, but also make sure that people get things done?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the long run, I mean, you shouldn't have to boss people around. I think you make that early call of kind of incubating the person that you are hoping that you get, as well as like, so mentoring, incubating, and also teaching, and like if you have to become a boss, that sucks. Like, that's such a waste of energy in the long run. Like, and it's just an aura that will be hard to break. So I mean, all in all, it's like I want to be everyone's best buddy. Like, and I think there's times to draw the line of like, I don't want anyone to walk on me, and I don't want to walk on them. And so, my whole crew of people that I manage and work around, everyone, has that flexibility, and I want them to still be a person. I don't want them to lose their personalities when they come to work. And I think that's the key ingredient. Like if you early on you search out those people that kind of mesh well with your personality and your style, and I think all in all you shouldn't have to manage that. There's always going to be people that you're going to be teaching and bringing up, but that comes down to like teaching good habits, right? I want people to feel relaxed and be excited about coming to work, and I think that's the key ingredient.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate that.
I don't want to be a boss. I think I suck at that. I just want to be like, I also want people I never want to feel that energy. Like, sometimes where people can't walk the walk, I also don't want to ever have that. I want to make sure that like, if someone's trudging through, knee high, like, and they're having problems, I want to be able to know that I can help them, or I know who to get to help them, and that's another thing. Like, I that's the like worry. I've met people that want to like franchise CNC shops, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is like just setting yourself up for failure. Like anyone can buy a machine and anyone can open up a MSC order, but there's something so much more to it, and it's something that goes so deep into the person and their thinking and the energy they emit in each part that they do, right? And it's like, this isn't a 7-Eleven. Like these are smart crafts people that like have an awesome skill. And so it's like, you can't just open a catalog and buy this franchise. And that's like my worry when, I think about like employees and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe this world will change a little bit. Like maybe it will become more franchised as things like, CAD and CAM get more streamlined, where you push go and it comes in, and it's like Proto Labs where it's a pre-built quote, a pre-built CAM algorithm, and it's pre-built on stock, and all you need is a robot arm to put the block in, and it mills away 5 inches of material to get a 1-inch part out of it, and like, and there's a system to it. Like, I don't know, like, efficiency gains are in weird perspectives at that point, but I guess maybe it's franchisable in the future. But it's just hard right now because, the world that I live in is in a production world, and it's really comes down to the people and the passion in order to pull the projects off. And so, yeah, I think all in all, like, it's all, yeah, it's that energy. I think if you don't, that's the most important part.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's seeming like it's hard to find those people too.
But you can build those people, and
At least out here it is.
I think that's the interesting thing that always like that people forget is like, I think it's hard because everyone always says, oh yeah, there's a shortage of this and there's a shortage of that and there's a shortage of this, and it's like a lot of times it's taking that energy and emitting it into like someone else and giving them the hope and faith that they can do it, right? So that's finding a trade school that you talk to like you go to your local community college, you reach out to the machine shop instructor and you say like, hey man, like I got this machine shop down the street and I'm super excited, and like I'm wondering if you have like a kind of an all-star in your class or someone that you feel like might be a real big help to like to kind of get that next bump. Send them my way, like I got a job for them, right? And so you have that ability to build that as well. I know it takes some energy to do it, but the best part about building someone up to being an awesome fabricator, builder, or just person in general is like you get to build them kind of exactly the way you want them to do it, right? And so like you have this clean slate to teach them all the good things that and hopefully they don't get too many of the bad ideas, but at least like you can you can teach them that, and you can build them up, and you can find their strong points. And it's amazing when you find those people how many things you see that they do really well, and you find that home for them. And it's inspiring also to hear the stories, and you have a friend for life as well. So through thick and thin, you have someone that knows that you help them, and they're going to help you back, even if it means, like shop slow and they might not get paid for a week. Like, it's pretty awesome. And I think it's just sometimes we get so self-centered and selfish, and we forget about how important it is to kind of help others. And I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah, I agree.
Dude, we're getting close to 2 hours.
Well, Jeff, I think
no, don't do it. The goal is that we started at 5 and then we see the sunrise.
Oh my god. One day, but not today, because I got parts to pack.
Oh man, it's
oh my goodness, Jeff.
Cool. Well,
Killing me.
I hope that you guys got a lot of information, and sorry for being a preacher.
No. That's why we have people on, is to kind of, learn everybody's, methods and ethos and all of that. Like, it's definitely an awesome community that we're all a part of. And I think the more that we know about each other, the better. So we appreciate you coming on. And real quick before we wrap up, what do you want to plug? Your Instagram, website? You still selling shirts on eBay? What's going on in your world that you want to plug?
Just like buy good things to help good people. Does that work? Like spend
yeah.
Just when you open up the MSC catalog, if it costs $50 more to get the thing that is helping a family, buy that. Because there's a lot of other people out there that are just like us, and sometimes it's hard to look at the options, and yeah, it's important. That's one of my major things I love to do is working for Elon and working for all these companies, is I find these little shops in the middle of nowhere, and I call them up and I make POs for giant orders. And they're like, what? Elon Musk? And I think that's what we need. We need people to stoke out people, and we need to just kind of crank away. And also I commend all the shops out there that have given time on their machines and manpower and labor to make ventilator parts and the face shields and masks and stuff. And I mean, you all know who you are. It's hard to do that stuff right now and give up valuable time. But as a manufacturer and being in that world, I think it's super important we have these tools and skills and knowledge to help in all the ways we can. So it's been really cool to see the manufacturing world step up and tie in people to helping.
I agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
So they can find you on Instagram at YetiMan01.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you can find me at Saunders Machine Works. But yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't plug anything, dude. The only thing I plug in is my hair dryer in the morning, so it's all good.
It's soon to be the espresso machine.
Yeah, exactly. By that time, it won't plug in. It'll be Wi-Fi. No, it'll be something else. Never mind.
There you go.
There's no plug on it. Cool. Thanks a ton for doing this. It's always awesome. Stoked that you guys are able to do this, and it's tons of fun to get out there and share. And hopefully maybe some people feel the excitement that I do and find a FIRST robotics program or someone at a community college that they can help out. And, I think if all I can do is do a podcast to maybe remind people that there's awesome people everywhere, as much as we sometimes often think that there's not. There's a lot of cool kids and there's a lot of cool people that just need an opportunity.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on, and you'll just have to come back on, and we owe you another 3 hours. So whenever.
No, don't lie. It's not 3 hours. 4. 4 hours.
Okay. Yeah, we owe you another 4 hours.
There we go.
Come on, Dylan.
Oh, send him back to high school math class. No, grade school. That's
6
awesome.
minus 2.
I'll just try to slip it in there, not
That's
overcommit
awesome.
too much.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Keep making.
Well, thanks again, man.
Go
have a
ship
great
your
night.
parts out before you miss your cutoff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll be thinking of you.
Perfect. That's good. I like that. Thanks again. Cut.
Thank you.